For 5 years now, the war in Iraq and the occupation has been a big story. A national story, an international story, and a local story. Anne-Marie Berger met with a reporter who thought the same thing and figured he wasn't going to get that story sitting in St. Louis.
Adam Allington has been reporting local news on St. Louis's national public radio station, KWMU, since 2006.
Adam Allington. Hey,
he covers local government, community issues, crime, any news pertaining to this region. But in December 2007, Allington went beyond anyone's comfort zone. He spent 2 weeks in the Anbar region of Iraq, reporting daily about what the service men and women from this area were doing.
KWMU's Adam Allington is traveling in Iraq with a group of Army reservists from Missouri, and he prepared this report.
Milan lives in Soulard. He's a lawyer and just passed the Missouri bar exam before being remobilized. He had already served one tour in Baghdad in 2005.
Initially, I got the idea when I discovered that this Army Reserve unit from St. Louis, the 307th Psychological Operations Company, was being deployed. And I found out it was their third tour in Iraq, and it just struck me that, you know, guys in the Army Reserves were now on their third tour. It was kind of like a road mile marker for the war, and I just started thinking about our own coverage of the war and how typically NPR member stations take their war coverage from the network, from NPR, but I thought there was an interesting local angle there that we could explore. Since a lot of these guys are from the St. Louis area, from our community, it seemed like we could actually cover the war from a community angle if we were there.
KWMU is the only NPR member station to send a local reporter to Iraq, and like the servicemen and women who are serving over there, Allington had to tell his family he'd be reporting from a war zone.
I talked about it with my wife, and she of course was very concerned about it. My parents were also really concerned. They thought I was taking an unnecessary risk. But I think it was a great opportunity, and once I explained it to everyone, they understood.
She's a cute little girl.
The members of the 307th Psychological Operations Company are mostly men from Missouri and southern Illinois. They're in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. Some are single, some are married, many have children, and their civilian occupations vary.
College students from southern Illinois, a Kmart manager from Cape Girardeau, kids from military families from western Missouri, you know, a real mixed bag of experience.
But currently in Iraq, they are all part of the U.S. Army Civil Affairs.
Psychological operations changes depending on what the conditions are on the ground. At this point, where I was in Anbar province, the overall violence level had really decreased a lot. So at this point, their mission was to go out into the community and be kind of a face of the U.S. military, of the coalition forces.
Staff Sergeant Eric Beckman from Lafayette, Missouri, has been doing PSYOP since he joined the Army at age 17.
In the civilian world, actually, if you're going to try and transfer over, you know, Army psychological operations training for college credits, it's usually in a marketing degree. Really, all that we're out here is selling ideas and thoughts and, you know, a way of life to try and to follow.
The question about the coalition forces.
The PSYOPs company was based in Ramadi, the capital of the Anbar province.
Hello.
This reserve unit from St. Louis has also been developing schools and infrastructure in the city, and with this tour had been on the ground 4 months when Allington joined them.
The thing that I was really concerned about is how would the soldiers feel about me tagging along and being, you know, right there with them for so many days. And thankfully they were very welcoming, very hospitable, and because I was with them all the time, I felt like they opened up to me more. Just because they were there with me, if I saw something or if I wanted to talk to someone about a certain, you know, issue, they were right there, and I could just go over to their barracks and talk to them, or their office, and it sped up the pace of my reporting quite a bit just because it was all right there.
Allington accompanied the PSYOPs unit on their missions in full fatigue like a soldier. However, he was just an embedded member of the media, armed only with a tape recorder and microphone. Because you're not a trained soldier.
No.
You're not...
No, not at all. And I kind of learned from vicariously experiencing what little I did with military life. I learned that I am probably not cut out for the military.
Did you feel like you weren't safe?
No, I never felt threatened. That's the one thing a lot of people asked me before I went, if I was nervous or scared, but I was really only nervous about whether or not I would have access to stories and interviews, and if I'd be able to freely talk to people.
And were you?
I was. But I was never concerned. In the back of my head, I knew that anything could happen, but, I would be there for 2 weeks. These guys had been there for years. So, my odds are nothing compared to what they've had to deal with.
After 2 weeks of reporting on the progress and struggles of the St. Louis-based PSYOPs company in Iraq, Allington made it back home without a scratch. However, he says that there is some talk about the company being deployed to another region before their tour is over, possibly a less safe one. Would you do it again?
Yeah, I would love to do it again. There's more stories to tell for sure. I was there for 2 weeks, and I could have easily stayed 2 months and done more stories just on Missouri.
Most soldiers who live on bases like Ramadi share a TV, also multiple video game systems, DVD players, computers. The St. Louis boys have even built a driving range. Sergeant Clyde Rhodes is from South County.
Looking out, there's a berm about 75 meters out, and then on the other side of that berm is Iraq, outside of the base camp control.